Welcome to Might in Motion, where we help you navigate your personal and professional goals to manifest them into your deserved career and life path. Here at Might in Motion, we don't make excuses, we do the work and go above and beyond. The Might in Motion podcast brings you guests that will help stretch you out of your comfort zone and push you to improve your goals.
Tonight, I am so happy to welcome Greg Fisher. He is the founder of Mindset of a Marine and the co-founder of Burn Pit Barbecue. He loves to share grilling and barbecuing recipes and tips. He served 3 combat deployments in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. As a Marine, he led and took part in combat and humanitarian missions. Greg was honorably discharged at the rank of sergeant in 2006 and received his BS from the University of Wisconsin, Parkside, and his Master of Business Administration from Alverno College. Greg spent 10 years working in the insurance and finance sector as a leader and coach. He's certified ECHO and neuro leadership brain-based professional coach. In 2020, Greg left the comforts of the corporate world and launched Burn Pit Barbecue, where he shares the grilling and barbecuing tips, recipes, and seasonings he learned in the backyard to help beginners cook delicious meals. And now he's making a really cool pivot and helping others continue to learn and grow through his own mentorship program. I am thrilled to welcome Greg tonight to Might in Motion. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
And I really appreciate your service to our country and everything that you sacrificed. As we kind of talked a little bit in the green room right before we started, my husband's a combat wounded veteran. He was a Marine as well. So we are big with everything Marine Corps in our house all the time. His brother was a Marine. My father was Air Force. So, like you can make fun of that, but at least he was an Army. I come from a long line of military and really appreciate everything that you've done for our country.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. And of course, I thankful for, people like your husband and his brother and your father for serving. So we are all volunteer military force. So I appreciate anybody that's ever raised their hand and served their country.
You've had a very interesting journey, career-wise, and how you've kind of moved through your career. Did you join the Marine Corps right out of high school, or did you go to school first? What was that path like?
Yeah, so my path to the Marine Corps was right out of high school. I was a senior in high school when September 11th happened, where the planes flew into the buildings and all those Americans died. So I'd already been looking at going into the military, but that kind of solidified it for me. So once I graduated, in June of 2002, I was off to boot camp, and then eventually found my way over to Iraq for the invasion, and then a few more times after that.
Wow. And then you've transitioned from the Marine Corps, you went into corporate life.
Yeah.
And I've hired a lot of former military. I've had a lot of military on my teams over the past 22 years. Sometimes that can be a really tough transition. What was that like for you to move from being in the military to being into a corporate situation?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of a buffer because once I came back from the Marine Corps, I went into college. I went to school, so I got to at least reacclimate a little bit before I stepped into a professional environment. But even that transition was a little difficult because now I'm an older guy on campus. I've had some real life experiences. So that was challenging in itself. Being around 18, 19-year-old kids that are just coming out of high school. And then, after graduation, going right into the corporate world, being a Marine, very task focused. That was kind of the path I wanted for myself. And it took me a little bit of time to get used to that environment and being able to be productive as well as, be myself again.
Yeah, that I can see could be a difficult transition. Are there things that those of us like myself, I never served in the military, that we could do from a hiring perspective, from a transition perspective into a corporate position that we could just do a better job of, that maybe nobody's had the guts to tell us?
Yeah, when I was working, at a large corporation, I was part of the Military Veterans Employee Resource Group. So I got to implement a lot of different things that help with that transition of new veterans coming in behind me. And the biggest thing would be, mentorship. Um,
Yeah.
One thing I wish I would have had when I was young, starting out, would be to team up with somebody within that organization that is a veteran that maybe has been there for a while. That would certainly be helpful. And for me personally, it took me a long time for me to open up. Like I had coworkers I worked with for 3 years that never knew I served in the military because that
Oh
wasn't
wow.
something that I was open and willing to share, so to speak. So I mean, having opportunities to do that a little bit more would probably be helpful. I know for me and a lot of other veterans that I talk with, especially ones that serve overseas or in combat and high stress environments, we just want to put our head down and go to work because we've basically had our life on the line for years, and now we just want to come back and maybe decompress a little bit and be left alone, so to speak.
Right.
So, having somebody that's been through that, someone that's been in the organization for a while, that we could be paired up with, be a mentor for us, would probably be very helpful.
Yeah, I am grateful for the company that I work for. We have a really big associate resource group, focused on the military, but then we also partner a lot with military fellows. So men and women who are within, let's say, 6 months of
Mhm.
transitioning out of the military come and actually do almost like an internship for that
Yeah,
period of time, and that seems to help a lot from a transition perspective. But also with that was, we would do things like, how do you look at a resume, right?
right.
Because you're going to have a ton of acronyms on your resume that mean absolutely nothing for me, right, as
Yeah,
a civilian, but actually translate into real skills on how do you handle a crisis situation, how do you go and be creative when everything is going crazy around you, but to still get to a solution. Right. Like I said, I'm privileged enough where when I have a resume in front of me, I come home and I show it to my husband. I'm like, what does ABCDXYZ mean? Because I don't know what that means. And he's like, oh, that means this.
yeah.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's not only on the employers. I mean, our military and government needs to do a better job of educating and training. Because even the basic, Marine that's been in for 4 years has probably been in a leadership position at a young age.
yeah.
In charge of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of equipment. Now, how do we translate that into civilian speak or employer speak? Because those are some very high level skills that we need to make sure that our employers know that our service members and military members have coming, right out of the service.
Right, right. Now, you then transition from corporate America and now you make barbecue.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a weird transition, huh? Yeah.
I love it. What inspired you to just like hang up that corporate America hat and put on an apron and do what you do?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, like I was very task focused when I got out of the military. Was I wanted to go to school, then I wanted to work for a large organization, have some stability. But then when I started doing that, I found that like that wasn't where my heart really was, and I was kind of turning into somebody that you know wasn't aligned with who I was anymore. So, but all along the same time, I loved the barbecue and grill because that was kind of my getaway. So a way to decompress in the backyard, light up the grill and throw some throw some food on there. So over time, I got pretty good at it and developed seasonings and sauces that I would give away as gifts, to family members and friends at holidays and such. Um, and basically my breaking point was during COVID. Um,
Mhm.
I've been with my organization for over 10 years, and I was sitting behind a desk at home, working 10, 12 hours a day for somebody else, and I was just like, hey, there's got to be something better than this out there. I was miserable, depressed,
Yeah.
anxious, stressed out. So I was like, there's got to be something better. This really isn't worth it for me anymore. Even though it was stable and paycheck, I could find a way to make money doing something else, as long as it means that like I don't feel like this anymore. So that's how I transitioned into the barbecue side. Was I was like, I'm gonna leave this corporate job and I'm gonna go pursue something of my own And after some long, hard conversations with my family and my friends, in July of 2020 is when I left.
That is awesome. I think it's so important. I think we all have dreams, right? We all have things that are like, man, that would be really, really cool to go do. And so few people actually pull the trigger to go do it. Right. And
Yeah.
that's everything from going out on your own, but also at times going after that promotion or taking a lateral and doing something you've never done before and just put yourself out there as it could feel like a lot of risk, but there could be a lot of reward because of it.
Yeah, I mean, uncertainty is, in the fear of change, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I work with the same organization. I moved around a little bit because I was trying to find that purpose. So I went from, individual contributor to leading people to eventually helping leaders develop. So I jumped around a little bit within that organization, which was great because I got to develop a lot of skills. I got to, meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I always thought that next thing was going to be the thing that fulfilled me, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately I had to look and make that choice. I came to that conclusion, and the uncertainty of entrepreneurship was more exciting and more stable, honestly, than staying with this organization, where I tried a lot of different things. I still wasn't, being fulfilled, or, I was still miserable. So, that's what kind of pushed me over to take that courageous step into the unknown.
So I was watching one of your clips on Instagram. It might have been today or yesterday. I can't remember when exactly you posted it, but you posted a picture of a quote from a book, and then you were talking about like being honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be done in a variety of different contexts, right? That could be from a physical well-being, what are you putting into your body? What are you doing with your body? But there's also that honesty of, hey, I'm not being fulfilled by what I'm pursuing. I'm being told I'm supposed to pursue this corporate ladder, and it's one rung at a time, and da 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 da. And you were honest with yourself to say, this is not pouring into you. If you're not being poured into yourself, you're not going to pour into others, right? So maybe share with the audience a little bit more about what that self-honesty means to you and how that's transitioning you in your life and continuing to create change in your life.
Yeah. I posted that. I think it was this morning or yesterday, and what really resonated with me about that book and that passage in that book was about the self-honesty, being brutally honest with yourself. And here I was, working a job. I was miserable. It was affecting my relationships with my family. And, at the end of the day, I had to look and say, is this worth, is this job and just a stable paycheck and benefits? Mm-hmm. Is this worth my mental health? Is this worth costing me my relationships with my wife and my kids? And honestly, it was no. It was a no. It was a hard no. I can always make more money doing something else or going back to that environment if I need to. But at this point in time in my life, I needed to take this step away to find myself again, and then also start to develop deeper relationships with the people I cared about. So having that not only brutally honest conversation with myself, I had to turn around and then talk to my spouse about that and my family, because that was kind of out of character for me to resign and move on to something like this. So I got a lot of people questioning me, my motives, and, kind
mm-hmm.
of, maybe second guessing or from the outside, not knowing if it was going to work. And, I know that comes from a place of love and care and respect. So it took a lot to be able to share that with my spouse and then the other people that I knew I needed to share that with. So a lot of honest conversations with myself and with, those closest to me.
Yeah. I mean, that it all comes back to communication and honesty with who we have relationships with as well. Now you're taking what you've learned, right, through your being a Marine, what you're doing with Burn Pit Barbecue, everything in between, and now you're taking that and you're wanting to give back and help others.
Yeah, service is in my blood, and even when I was in that corporate environment, I was a certified coach and leader and mentor, and I carried those skills with me into my business. And by me sharing my story, and I share my story on LinkedIn here quite a bit, so I had people, especially men, reach out to me and saying, "Okay, I feel just like you did. I'm miserable. My relationship with my family is suffering. How did you do it?" So I work with a lot of people to help them, compress, my time frame, and give them some tools and some guidance of, how I went about that transition. That's how I continue to give back, and I enjoy doing that. If I can help people, and you don't have to quit your job, you don't have to do that because that's pretty extreme. But we can find other ways for you to feel fulfilled, or fill your cup up in other ways, so that you're not continually to burning out to a point where it's going to cost you your health.
Right. Do you think that there is a correlation between what you're physically doing with that mental health as well? So,
Um,
like physical well being, working out, doing all that kind of stuff. How does that connect for you?
yeah, I think a term I heard recently is the business athlete.
Ooh,
Um,
I
that I
haven't
really,
heard that one.
yeah, that being an entrepreneur, or even being a high level executive in a corporation, like, not only do you have to be mentally sharp, but what plays into that too is your physical health. So
Yeah.
a lot of these high level performers in organizations, these high level entrepreneurs, they take care of their body just as much as they take care of their business, because their body is their business. If their health fails them, they can't be as productive or as sharp, mentally, to be able to continue to run their business or their organization and lead people. So I'm seeing a lot more of that, which
Mhm.
I love to see that, because I think that's true. We can't bring ourselves fully to the table if we're, you know out of shape, or not taking care of our bodies as we should. So I think they tie pretty well together, and I'm glad to see more people are taking control of their health,
Mhm.
just as much as they are taking control of, you know their I guess their mind and their growth in that way.
What are some things that you've started in your own life that has really helped you on that physical journey that's now you're like, "Wow, that's really helping me mentally as well."
Yeah, and I'm not afraid to say, like, the vices got me pretty good. The Marine Corps is very, and we train hard and we party harder.
Yep.
So it's a drinking culture, so to speak, in the military as well. And I grew up in that, right? So I joined at 18, and 18 through 22 or 21. We were, getting after it pretty good, and that followed with me. And that
Mhm.
was probably something that I should have stopped earlier. But once I started to really cut back on the alcohol and that kind of stuff, it changed and transformed my mental clarity, and my body as well. So I'm glad I made that choice. And I would, if somebody's looking for a quick way to maybe improve their life, the alcohol, maybe some of the poison you're putting in your body, could go, and you could quit that stuff, and make a pretty quick change mentally, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've done, like, the 75 Hard program a few times, and it's always entertaining, if I'm on the road with work and everybody's like, "Wait, what? You're not gonna have a drink? Like, what's wrong with you?" Like, "No, I'm on my 75 days," and then when 76 day comes, I don't even want it.
Right.
It's a very kind of few and far between, because it's like when you do, it just everything gets cloudy, and you
Yeah.
don't I don't think you really recognize that everything gets cloudy unless you've actually departed from it for a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the longer you kind of go without you, the longer you kind of see that you really don't need it. And
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, I've done it in the past, and I don't know if I'll do it again in the future. But at this point in time, like, I have no wants, and really no craving for it at all,
Mhm.
just because I've been performing at such a high level. Like, I don't want to go back.
Right.
So that's what I've found, and it took me 20 plus years to find that. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to be in the right mental capacity to be able to do that, and if you need help, find resources to help you do that.
Right. I also see you post a lot and talk a lot about breath work.
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
does tell our audience, like, what is breath work if people maybe don't know, and like I think of yoga and doing like very vocal responses when I'm doing different types of yoga, but you're really like you're just laying there doing your breath work. And how has that helped you?
Yeah, so I recently started probably about 3 or 4 months ago. I started really kind of researching and learning more about how breath affects every part of our beings, from um, diseases to mental health and just overall wellness. So that's what really intrigued me. I was just coming off of an ACL surgery, so I was kind of incapacitated, so to speak, and I was
Right.
looking for ways to naturally kind of improve the body's process to heal, and the breath work continued to come up, and it's just something that stuck with me. So I follow the Wim Hof method,
Okay.
which so Wim Hof is pretty famous in that world, so to speak, where he didn't create anything new. He's just sharing old ancient techniques in today's world. So he has his own methods, and a lot of this has to do with, I believe it was his own wife who took his life, or her life, that kind of pushed him down this path to share this one of these techniques to help people with mental health. So
Hmm.
that's what intrigued me about it. I do it every morning as a way to one, get more oxygen into my body, and then also as a way to help with that mental clarity. So I'm not an expert in it by any means, but I've noticed some pretty good results in my mental clarity, my mental health, as well as just my overall kind of well-being.
Oh, I love it. I love that you're trying new things and you're testing. You're
Yeah.
using yourself as that testing ground to see how does it work for you. And if it's working great, then you can apply that in different parts of your life, or you can help others along the way as they try to test new things as well. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm all about trying new things to see kind of. Um, it's more kind of the trying like natural kind of remedy things, as opposed to kind of what's shoved down Western society is pharmaceuticals and
Hmm.
treating like the symptoms and not the root cause of disease. So I'm very passionate about that.
Now you mentioned that you have particularly men probably approaching you on how to continue to improve. They're seeing what you're doing. They're seeing you as an example. If somebody reaches out to you on that front, what are some things that you would start with a person to try to understand where are they trying to go and how you can help them? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is it's an open and honest conversation, and they ask me a lot of questions first, so it's a lot about like how did you do it, you know those types of things. But then ultimately it comes back to, okay, where are you at right now? How are you feeling? What
Mhm.
is your mental health? What does your career look like? Is there anything there that you see yourself doing still? How's your family life? So that tends to help me put together a better picture of the overall individual, that as opposed to just this one situation. And then from there, we kind of dive down to, okay, what do you really want to get out of this conversation? And then if it's, well, I want to transition from my job, or I want to, do something else, do this, then we kind of explore that path. And part of my expertise in coaching and mentoring is helping people to develop a plan of action and then holding them accountable. As coaches, that's the biggest thing that we can offer, is getting them to think outside of the box and think of things that they necessarily might not have themselves, and then also helping them develop a plan to put in place to get them closer to that end result. And that's kind of how the conversation goes, and that happens probably over a few sessions, and then it's kind of digging in deeper as we go, because halfway through it could be like, hey, this is what I wanted, but now I'm down the path. Uh, it's not really what I want. And,
Yeah.
now it's this thing because this changed, or I had more time to reflect and think, and that's what we can offer, is them the space to be able to um, share ideas and thoughts that they might not be able to get with their spouses or other people that they know.
Yeah, and I think especially among men, it's so important for men to have other men to talk to and
Right.
to, and I just feel like that it seems to me that some part of the way that's been lost.
Mm.
Women, we tend to find each other, right? We still like to chit chat. It might be via text. It might be like, I have girlfriends that we do voicemails to each other. We don't
Mhm.
ever actually get on the phone at the same time, but we're constantly leaving 5 minute long voice dissertations, right? Of, hey, this happened today. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily see men doing that as much. And I'm sure coming from a male dominated world like the Marine Corps, there was a lot of fellowship there. There was a lot of those things happening while you're, rucking it or whatever, right? Like you're doing stuff, you're talking to each other while you're doing stuff, right? There's a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
So
And
like, is
it's
that
it.
something you felt was missing too?
Yeah. I mean, and that's looking back at it now, that was one of the biggest things was growing up, I'd always played sports, so I'd always, around, guys, and then, men coaches. So I always had that
Mm-hmm.
male kind of leadership. And then, going into the Marine Corps, same thing. You work hard, then you have that camaraderie, you come together. It's almost, primal. You're going out and you're doing some hard stuff, and at the end of the day, you're coming back and you're gathering as a group. And then you transition out of that and back into the real world, or not the real world, but the civilian world,
Yeah.
and you lose that. And that's what we're seeing. There's a lot of mental health issues, depression, PTSD, um, suicides with members of the military, because we come back and we isolate,
Mm-hmm.
because society tells us that men should be strong, quiet types, at least Western society. And then we go on and we don't feel like we can share, or we don't feel like we have a connection with anybody anymore. And for me, I was blessed that I was a good athlete in high school, and that carried over to college, where I was able to find another group of men to play college soccer with. So I had that bonding right away out of the military, and then I've been able to find that at different stages of my life, through other things. So mentorship, through martial arts,
Mm-hmm.
and some other things. So um, biggest piece of advice I can give men is to go challenge themselves and get around other men, to play sports or do something that they enjoy doing, because you can't find that connection, at least from my experience, with women or female, because it's just a different type of vibe and environment.
Right. And I think that's okay. It's okay to have,
Yeah,
where you're getting that from other men
right.
versus trying to necessarily get everything from your spouse or your significant other or whatever. I think that's important. So I know we're getting a little bit close to our end time. And so I'm going to ask you a very important question.
Okay.
Um, if you could go back and talk to Greg from 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give him?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess 10 years ago, I'm trying to think of where I was. I think I was just about to lead a team. Um, I guess I would say, you know, one, you're right where you're supposed to be, because at that point in time, and we tend to try to think way ahead, or try and wish we were further ahead than we are. I would tell myself, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, and then also enjoy the moment. Don't don't take it too seriously, because at that point I was still very gung ho, and kind of climbing my way up that corporate ladder. And I would
Mm-hmm.
probably tell myself to slow down just a little bit. You're doing fine, and give myself a little bit of compassion, because I was pretty hard on myself.
Yeah, I love that thought of you're right where you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
And so that we're so focused on the future, we're so focused on the past, we forget about the gift that is the present, right? And I love that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, if people are interested in learning more about a mindset of Marine, what you're doing, maybe joining your coaching group, how can they best find you, connect with you, and figure out next steps?
Yeah, Instagram's a great way to find me. So Mindset of a Marine is where I kind of get a little bit more personal with my story, and you can DM me there. Otherwise, in my bio, I have a link to a form that you can fill out that'll come to me. Otherwise, like on LinkedIn here, I'm pretty open. I share a lot here too, as well. And you can just find me at Greg Fisher and connect with me there and start a conversation. Pretty informal, and I'm happy to help however I can, in any way I can.
Thank you so much, Greg, for joining. I'll make sure I put all of this information in the show notes when we post this at the podcast. So definitely take a look, hit the link, follow him, Mindset of a Marine. That's mindset_of_a_marine on Instagram. Just great inspirational content. And, like he said, you can DM him and learn more.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.